Hello and welcome to the first annual memorial race for the hashtag Be More Freddie. It's supporting the Bodie Hodges Foundations, and you can find a bit more details about the foundation in the description of the video. It's fantastic to have all of you joining us. I know it's a big deal to all of those involved with the project, the hashtag Be More Freddie project, especially Parky. I would just like to thank everyone here for taking part, whether that's racing today, watching the video, supporting the hashtag Be More Freddie movement, and just being there for him. Today on the Chasing the Sun course, we've got 5 different races going on at the same time. So this is going to be something we call a points race, just to introduce you to it here. There's a lot of numbers on the screen. But for those of you who aren't aware, we have 3 different types of scoring here. We have finish points. When we get to the end of the course for the first riders across the finish line, you can see the big box on the right hand side for all of those. Then we have fastest through the segment points. So these are all the segments you can see featured: the alley sprint, the railway sprint, the country sprint, Temple KM and the tower sprint, along with first cross line points. So fast through the segment, so the just fastest time from A to B on that specific area, whereas the first across the line is for those who have got across the line first, as if you have a breakaway up the road, whereas fastest through segment can be set by absolutely anyone. See the course today, we've got a nice little bump at the start. Some people will call it hill, others will call it just a small undulation, but it'll be a good 2-3 minute effort up the little climb we have. But then the big feature today is going to be the Temple KOM. So we'll jump onto the stream for you now. We've just got a few more minutes to go before the start. A few more minutes, about 20 seconds. We've got a strong field today, so we've got 5 different categories, as you mentioned, starting off with some of the diamond and ruby riders in the A pen. I'm going to try and follow as many of the different categories as we can, but that's going to rely on everything working smoothly, so I don't want to promise too much here. Oh, even better, we can see everyone on the screen at the same time. That's perfect. We've got all the pens setting off together. You can see the B pen here, which are the riders on the right hand side of your screen, the green logo with the B in it. We see starting off, we had the A pen setting out early, so because they had a bit of a lead coming out the gate, they've managed to get away straight away and want to try and open up a little bit of gap for the first segment. And as mentioned earlier, the first segment coming up is just 0.7 kilometers in, which is why we're getting out the gate really hard as people fight to get those points. With it being only just under a kilometer to go before the segment, everyone's going to be bursting away. You see Ali on the renowned dirt riders just leading away from Parky here. And then behind we've got DRB, strong rider from the Cryogen team, and Daniel Nerlo from OTR. He's been around the scene a little bit, good sprinter. See Ali there starting to suffer as he's almost coming to the start of the sprint segment, which is just after this left turn here. You might be able to just faintly see there's a green flashing banner. That's the start of the sprint segment. So we're going to have FTS through here and first cross line. It's about 20 seconds long at full pace, but as we look back down the field, it's all really spread out. But going back to the lead of the race, you've got Ali here coming first through it, and Minarlo chasing him down. But again, people aren't going all in yet. It is a points race, so it's important to try and get a little bit immediately at the start. Just start picking up those points. But as you see from the comments, everyone is suffering already as people went flying out the gate. Ali's still trying to maintain it, just holding off. See DRB and Manalo starting to come through now. Manalo hitting up 10 watts per kilo. Is he going to pip Ali before the line? I think the line's going to come a bit too close. And in the A category, which is Diamond and Ruby, we'll see Ali taking first across the line with Manalo. It's probably taking FTS. Yep, as we can see on the left-hand side, there's our FTS points for category A. Let's see, I'm not sure if we'll be able to get them for the other categories, but as we go through, we might see them pop up. Getting a good performance from all the riders there. Saw Paul Harris there, taking the FTS of all of them, beating out the A categories for that time, so he'll be under 30 seconds there, and getting AL points there. So a really interesting start to the race. Now got it settling down just a little bit. Things will start to bunch back up as we go into the next segment. Let's just see if we can get that up. It'll be the railway sprint, which is a bit of an interesting one. We've got about a couple of minutes beforehand. We have a little bit of a climb beforehand, just a punch. It's only about 30 seconds. And we'll see the riders starting to attack up there, splitting it up. But importantly, it's a bit of a downhill. sprint. So you don't want to be going too early. You can hold off and just sit in people's wheels. You drop back to the E and Ds, who have already kind of broken apart, and it's turning into a long race for these riders. The best thing they can do is try and bunch up, as you see some of them doing here, which will be our lead bunch for the Bs, for the E's. And then we see the D's are spread out with some riders. We've got Alex from the Megas, M. Gill from Dirty Sea Dogs, forming this little group here, just trying to jump on with some of the riders in the higher categories. So jumping back to the front group, it's nice and formed up here. We've got a big variety of abilities. We've got a couple of diamond riders all the way down to what I presume will be maybe some gold riders in here. So it's real different kind of standards, with sprints varying, their ability to go long, their fitness varying. So you should see some exciting racing. And hopefully some of these riders are going for the Be More Freddie award that we're awarding out today for the rider who kind of resembles Freddie's spirit most by the way they're racing this race, by doing things differently and being a positive outlight in this race. So here we go. We've got a couple of attacks very early. I'm not sure they're necessarily going to come to much. We're on the Pack Dynamics 4.1. As you see, Parker giving a lovely shout out. With Pack Dynamics 4.1, it's a new update to the Swift racing, where it slows down these mass bunches that we tend to see. So you've got a nice big bunch back there, and what used to happen is they just constantly push past each other, just up their speed one after another. But what they've done is they've reduced that now, so you really have to work to get to the front and keep working if you want to hold that speed. See some of the rides when they're breaking away there, we see Darb, not quite sure how he pronounces it, pushing hard at going up to 49 kilometers an hour for a few seconds there, and he's working hard and he's getting a gap as we come up to this little bump, as I was talking about earlier, not the main climb at the start of the course, but this little bump before we go into the sprint segment. So he looks like he's going to go long for those first across the line points. See if we can get them on the screen for you, just a reminder. So this one's at FTS points. Should have been a bit more accurate with that. So maybe not the best move, but if he can keep away, then it could definitely work from his favour. He's definitely going to be one of the fitter riders here. As you see, everyone else complaining about the gaps, and that's one of the big features. If people aren't determined in their chase, we see Tom Zervik here trying to chase it down with a couple more of the B riders, just stretching the pack out up there. If there's no determined chase, then it's much easier for a rider to break away. See him coming towards the start of the segment here. There's a little lip, 5.43% up around this corner, and then you'll just start to see this on this left-hand side, the start of the sprint banner. Now this is a long sprint, similar to what we've just seen, maybe a bit longer, and it's all downhill, so its key is getting the speed up early, which is what we're seeing happening here. He's really pushing away, but we'll probably see the likes of Manalo just sitting in a bit more and really sending it from the back. Although not quite, we see Ali starting to do that, but it could be close then between Ali and Darm at the front. I'm not quite sure. Everyone's just staying nice and relaxed. And there we go. Everyone, I think, was just sitting and waiting for the move to happen. See Manalo lighting up, Parky getting on his wheel, Ali on his wheel too. But again, I think Manalo's just got the jump on him. See, if you look at the gap behind, Parky's just managing to keep it at 5 meters as they come through the group, really pushing hard, and they're going to really close that gap now up to the riders in front, with Florian Hauser having broken away a little bit from the group. Needs to keep working the line, but we'll see Manalo's going to take it just from Parky there. So that's another strong result from Manalo on the points. Remember, these points as we go throughout, you can see them there, 10 points for when it's the first cross line segment. This is on the FTS segment, so first, and that's 20 points, then 17 points for second, 15 for third, all the way down to 5 points for 10. So these really add up, especially when the finishing points that we were talking about earlier started at 100 and dropped down quite quickly. So with 5 segments to play for today, you can easily make up any kind of gaps at the finish. It's going to make for an exciting race here. Looking a little bit further back, should be starting to see the D's and E's coming through that segment. See, this is one where it really starts to hurt riders, as it's just a longer effort for these guys and girls, and it's very easy to get caught out. Some of these D's and E's will be putting out 6, 7, 8 watts per kilo for this segment, but their base pace might be, say, 2, 3 watts per kilo. So that's a real big difference, and they can easily get a 10, 15 second gap if people don't have the energy left to push and hold onto their wheels. And so you see in lower categories, these segments really have an impact on the field far more so than they do in the higher categories, where it will come apart and people will get dropped, but as a whole, the front pack generally stays together. Now going back to the front, we see he's now got a good 4-5 second gap. This climb we have here, as I mentioned earlier, it is a long climb. There's 3 minutes on Zwift situation for climbs is fairly up there because we just don't have that many. Oops. But realistically, it's generally flat. There's 3, 4, 5% rises, and then there's one slightly steeper rise round the corner that we'll see coming up in a little bit, and then continue to the end. But most of this is very draftable. See, the speed's still up with him solo at 30, 32 kilometers an hour, and so most of this you have a benefit sitting in. And so you see the riders back here in the pack, some like Manalo just doing 4 watts per kilo, compared to Ali trying to chase it down at 6. DRB up the road was doing 8 at points at the start of this climb. He's now settled to a more sustainable pace. He's doing very well to hold that gap. See about 9 seconds now, which is fantastic, especially over such a strong field. This is really stretching out the pack now with the points on offer here, just over the edge of it. So on this climb itself, there aren't any points as far as I'm aware. I'll have to double check that for you. See, my homework hasn't been perfect. But yeah, there's no points on this, but we've got the country sprint. So that's at 17.1 kilometers. So it's going to be a long way to go, but this is the key feature if we're going to make up time between now and then. If that group's going to close it down, or if DRB is going to make a decisive move to which no one else will want to carry on chasing. But the next time will be first across the line. That's the country sprint. So we're almost there with this climb. See, just coming around, heading towards the top here. We've got a couple of back-to-back kicks here. That's where it starts to really pick up. And generally when we drop back to see the main group, that's where we're going to see the real big attacks coming. I think it's 3, maybe arguably 4 switchbacks coming up. You might be able to see them in this chase group with the rest of the Bs and As. I don't like using the terms Bs and As because it's not necessarily accurate, but should we say in the B pen and the A pen, where we've got the variety of different categories entered. That's the kind of chase group we have here, but it's just split in 2 with Hatch on dirt riders, Paul, very experienced rider. He'll be a bit frustrated, I think, to have been dropped, at least slightly dropped so far, and Gowan from Ink and Evo, just trying to close it back down. This is where we see the big advantage of a group, even with the new draft system, or pack system should we probably say, and it's 25, 20 kilometers an hour. So not much draft here, but once I get onto this flat section, well, it's just going to be flat now until the downhill. We'll start to see it speed up, but out of the draft, it's really going to hurt them if they can't get back on, and when they hit the downhill, that'll be it. If they're not connected by the downhill, they're going to be off the back and going pretty much individually for the rest of the race. So they've been setting a really tough pace here. You can see the amount of dirt kits represented. We've got the Merc kit for Mums Inside Riding Trainers in pink. We've got the orange kit, which is the new Dads Inside Riding Trainers community kit, and then the old black one. So you just look in, they've got the OTR kit, you can see from Manalo on the right hand side, and one of the llama kits that Parky's wearing towards the back. So see that gap has maintained at about 9 seconds. The lead rider, it's a fantastic performance from him. He's been really hitting good form of late. It's good to see moving on up from B and competing with the top riders here. Oh, a classic Zwift giving you some interesting views there. I'm not sure how close you want to see Valley's legs, although he may say differently. We got some nice views over Neokio as we head down, and I'm going to move into the flats of Makuri Island. So what's going to be interesting with this kind of lead pack is whether they work together to try and chase down this gap. Because if they don't and they let it it'll be very easy for DRB just to kind of open it up. He's going to be on his limit, he's going to be hurting, but there's some nice flatter sections coming up after this where he can really make it count. And if he can get a good 20-30 second gap going onto the Temple KOM, then he's going to be absolutely golden. Could even go for a bike swap up it. And we've got no power-ups today, so this is just pure bike racing. There are obviously tactics to play, but there's no kind of special things. You see Tom Zervik there really pushing, using the chat, trying to encourage others to hold his wheel, but he's just gone straight off. No one's held him, so they're going to have to work too. They're to try and get back on. I think it's a kind of encouragement there just to close that gap and see if they can get it on the downhill where they have this advantage of being a larger group. So we've just still got a little bit more downhill and that little bump to go down. And this is where riders really should be trying to close the gap, make it easier on themselves, take advantage of these higher speeds that they have in the group. See Florian Hauser, a stronger kind of engines on the dirt team, just working his ways, renowned TT tier. And so he's just going to keep on driving the front of the group. I think he knows at this point 17 kilometers is the next segment for points. So he's got a good 10-15 minutes to do a bit of work and still get recovery. And that's why I was saying it's important the group tries to close this gap early if they're going to do it. Or if it's just going to be individuals, it's the same thing. They want to close it early so they have time to relax later on. See Manalo getting caught a bit towards the back. Not quite sure, he just had to put a little punch in. You see him moving to the front of the group now in that blue OTR kit. Just there. Yeah, they're starting to try and make a concerted effort to catch up. So we're going to leave them now and just head further back down the field. We've got a couple of individual riders. We've got Hatch here. As you just see them Parky's message about the Freddie Award. So it's going to be awarded after the stream. I'm obviously not chosen to present it. And Parky's going to award it to the rider who displays the best attitude towards this race. I'll see if we can get the full criteria. But he'll be getting a logo in the Discord of our several thousand rider Discord for the rest of time. These logos are very coveted. I'm still very bitter about not getting mine from one of the earlier after party races, being beaten by an A in a Cap E race, but what can you do? This is signing out to a really good, lots of little groups forming, which is exactly what we want to make this an interesting race before the long flats coming up. So we've got this mixed group forming. We've got Toby, who's another renowned team time trialist, who's done a lot of work with the Dirt Time Chasers team. And he's just sitting in here. I'm not sure there's any real reason for him to push, so looking at the kind of groups around, if we look at this right-hand bar, it gets a little bit confusing. The order seems to have been thrown out a bit, but I believe this group's the highest from the C-Pen, which if I just confirm which categories are in the C-Pen. So in the C-Pen is the Amethyst and Platinum categories, and then D is Gold and Silver. So just to remind anyone watching, we've got the A-Pen is for the Diamond and Ruby riders. We have 4 of those in there at the moment. Then in the B-Pen we've got the Emerald and Sapphire, which is usually the biggest group. See quite a lot of them spread out through the field now. We've got Chile back here with some of the C's, and a couple of solo riders who Paul R didn't quite manage to get back on, which he'll be a bit frustrated by. But again, soon enough he'll be swept up by this group behind most likely, unless he puts in a big effort just to stay away. And up the road we've got this lead group. Yep, so it looks like this group with Toby, Tan, Dickinson and Tommy is the lead group from the Amethyst and Platinums in the C-Pen. Then we have Chris from Evo, and then a whole host of other D riders. Alex from the Megas, H. Rody Jones from R3R Evo, and possibly another team. Well represented from lots of teams across the kind of, I don't want to use the term Zwiftiverse, but from the Zwift racing scene, and TBR is third team. So lots of representation, which is great to see the support here. We've got Mgill for the Dirty Sea Dogs, and En Rouge from Dirt, who's just off the back of that group, and that's a 27 gap. That's going to be a bit too long, I think, to bring across over the course of this race. Looking further back, we've got the E-Pen, so that's the bronze and copper riders. So these are generally riders either starting out on Zwift with lots going on, get some of the older rides, but there's a huge mix here, and you can get some very strange results happening in the old point system, old category system, where it's just based on 20 minutes. Lots of riders would jump in there for their first ever race and blast through, but now with the point system, riders are kind of, I don't want to say pre-categorized, but once they complete a race or two, or just some events in Zwift, they get a pre-rating based on their 5-minute power, their raw power times by their 5-minute watt per kilo, and then a small kind of factor based on their weight to kind of give them a rough compound score. And so they use that to put into categories to begin with, and then by racing they can move up or down a bit depending on how the results go. So we've seen much better competition for the bronze, copper, gold and silver riders, where they're not having races, I don't say ruined, but kind of overwhelmed, might be the best term, by riders just blasting away at the start. See them working their way through. But up the road we've got Andy B, who seems to be leading the way for them in a little two-rider breakaway with one of the Pen D riders. The US MES riders, I think it's US military of some form, I could be wrong. And then we've got Doug, one of the organisers of the Dirt Racing Series here, sitting in, not quite in the lead group of Ds, as we have En Rouge up the road as we saw, but they're going to be working together slow to try and chase him down, especially with the 4 or 5 of them. Just working, see them right on each other's wheels as we come through the arcade. Just going to head back to the front of the race now and see how they're getting on. So see, on the dirt section, as commonly happens, we have little attacks going away. We've got Paul and Tom Servic just pushing hard. So when we're on the dirt section, as would be in real life, you just go slower. It's a general physics, not sure how well represented it is. I feel like going across this dirt with all the trees so close and the roots might not do so well on these road bikes, especially with these disc wheels that we see on. But it's a very good time to just attack, and since the latest update in Makuri, they've expanded this dirt road, so it's much longer, gives a much better opportunity. But again, once people have their wheels, most of these attacks just settle down, and people don't bother kind of pushing on. Whereas I think we're going to see as we kind of develop more into this new pack dynamics that people will push away, going in hard, almost max efforts, and just keep going to get away, because you can't have a half effort to chase them down. It's got to be all in committed, doing exactly the same as they are to get back on their wheel once they open up that 5-6 meter gap. So as I mentioned earlier, we've got loads of different teams represented, lots of riders from around the world. If you just take a look at the flags on the right hand side, it really shows kind of support we've had for this, which is, I'm sure, means a huge amount to everyone. It definitely means a huge amount to Alan. I think for all of us who are here today, whether racing, commentating, just watching the live stream, we'd like to thank and send our best wishes through to Dave, Gemma, Harry, and all their family and friends. And we hope that this support can just help go just a little way to comforting yourselves, and especially any contributions people wish to make to the Bodie Hodges Foundation. The link's in the description of the video, and there's some more information about it down there. So please have a read and feel free to donate if you feel able to. See Manalo here going for an attack. So you see Thomas Ervik just pushing away off the front again. He's been a very aggressive rider so far, which is great to see, just testing out the field. But again, it just takes one person hitting those red numbers and the entire field responds. So Manalo lit it up 12 watts per kilo, which are big numbers to just randomly put out. And so he's making a clear move to not let him get away there and go for the breakaway. Now remember, they aren't necessarily racing each other. in some regards. For their individual pens, they're not really racing, but it's very much a case of pride for some of these riders, and you don't want to be the rider in the A-pan, wouldn't want to be a rider in any pan, but a rider in the A-pen getting beaten by a rider in the B-pen, and so they're going to chase them down just to prove a point, I think. You see Ali moving towards the front. Still got a few kilometers to go, not too many now before we hit the next sprint segment. As mentioned earlier, this one's going to be first across the line, the country sprint. It's normally notified and identified maybe by a bus stop. On the left hand side, see a couple more riders attacking. Now with it being first across the line, as mentioned, it is just the first rider to get there. So it doesn't matter how quickly you travel through it. If they want to do the work here, they could do it 2 kilometers ago, or they could do it just before the line. As long as they have that gap to the pack, they're going to get some good points. So you see the next attack's gone away, but Manalo's trying to chase it down again. As soon as someone chases, everyone else is forced to react. They don't want to let a rider go easily. It seems to be Ali. It's the main one. He's chasing down the kind of second breakaway attempts. Every time he seems composed enough to let the first one go, but as soon as he sees Manalo going, or DRB, etc., he's straight on their wheel. So now in the top right of your screens, just on the minimap, you might be able to see the little green arch indicating the end of the segment. Now this is a downhill segment, very high speed. You sometimes see times in around the 7.5 second mark here. So be prepared for people to really send it when we get to it. It's going to be short and sharp if we don't get any more early breakaways. So it's coming to the sprint segment. With the fastest through, tend to see riders sit towards the back, so they have the most riders to draft through, especially as essentially and Zwift riders are fairly invisible. You can just go straight through them and don't have to worry. But with these first cross lines, riders might be a little bit further forward just to make sure people don't get that jump. Again, with it being a short segment, they can't afford to let anyone get too much distance away from them, as they won't have long sprint. You can just see ahead of us the bus stop where the segment's going to start, and there we go. See Parky making the first move, Ali straight in his wheel, DRB lighting it up. I think that's Hendrick just chasing him down as well, and it looks like Hendrick's going to come through Parky there. Still got quite a way to go to the segment, and yeah, Parky's not quite going to hold on. Now the question is, can Hendrick hold off? Now there we go, DRB coming through very hot. See Manalo's quite far back. It's going to be good points for the rest of his group against him. DRB's going to come through and take the first cross line for them, followed by Ali, then Paul just pipping Hendrick, and then Parky behind. Good results there. Manalo just chilling a bit towards the back. Wonder if he's just conserving his effort for later, as we've got climb coming up quite quickly after. We initially start off with a bit of the castle climb, but that's not for the points today, and then we go into the temple KOM. So see, the riders been really sent back there, and it's important they try and get back on if they can. See Ervik here struggling a little bit. If he can get onto Florian's wheel, he'll be in a good position as Florian's jumping onto Manalo. They're getting a little group, but this lead group's really going to want to push on now. If they look behind and see the likes of Manalo, Tom Zervik, they will not want to be going up the temple KOM with them right on their tail. They want to build up a bit of a gap. So you'd like to think a couple of them might take it towards the front, putting in a bit of a move. But I think they're all really suffering after that sprint effort. You can see the numbers are still staying low. See the jump back, see some big numbers there from Paul. Oh, 15 watts per kilo is huge. Haven't seen that from him for a long while. That's fantastic to see, especially ahead of the upcoming ZRL and DRS seasons. And there we go, see Hatch again, putting in some big numbers, just getting outgunned there by Dickinson. But again, he's managing to beat Chile, which is going to be who he's fighting for the points. And that's what you've got to be really aware when it breaks up here. You've got to know who are you fighting. If you're in a group with 4 other riders in a different category, you just sit in. You still have to do enough to keep their wheels, and they're going to be fighting each other. But all you need to do is just sit in, and you're going to take that position. Whereas if you're level with someone, you saw with Hatch and Chile there, they're going to be fighting hard to try and get the jump on each other and just take those extra few points. So just jump back that lead group. Looks like we've got Manalo on his own off the back, and that Florian's made it back on. So really good from Thomas Ervik and Florian managing to jump back onto that group, but Manalo hasn't, which is going to be very disappointing. He's picked up a lot of points so far though, so it's not out of the running if he can solidify that 4th place, maybe pick up some of the FTS on the segments coming up. So the next 2 segments, we've got the Temple KQOM, which will be first across the line points, and FTS, so a very big and important segment there. And then we've got the Tower Sprint Reverse FTS, pretty close to the finish at 32.4 kilometers. So again, if Manalo can take some big FTS points there, he could still be on for the win. So he's possibly conserving his effort a little bit. But with these segments, the draft is really important. And so having a bigger group is going to pay in their benefit. See, Ali having to put a bit of work in. He was dropping towards the bank. See, DRB there, I'm not quite sure what was going on for those two riders there. I think a lot of them are too busy typing to notice where they are. DRB is just slowly falling back. And well, he's just blown up there. It's going to be disappointing for him. He had a fantastic showing early on. But again, it's going to be key to see how many points they've built up so far. Both of them have been doing very well, DRB and Manalo. And so we'll see if those points are going to be enough. Especially if they group up together, they could set some good FTS times in the coming segments. Looking further back, we've still got this little group here of some of the B's and C's. It's reformed after it got blown apart by Hatch and Chile, going for those long attacks on the sprint segment. But they're just holding their own, keeping off this other group behind, chase groups. We've got some of the D's and going all the way back, and now it's really separated out, I think. We've got Andy B for the Hectos leading the way in the E-Pen, but only 9 seconds ahead of this big chase group. Look like they're all working together, wearing their matching kit. So it's good to see them, and if they can start to work together to close that gap, it's going to be fantastic for them. But you see Andy B working hard there with this other rider, doing 3 watts per kilo on the front at times, so turning it into a bit of a time trial to stay away. It's really impressive. Again, we've got the climb coming up after. I mean, they've still got the sprint segment coming up, but after that they've got the climb. That's where the big gaps are going to be made or lost. So here we see the importance of just staying behind that wheel, with Jay Brook taking the points there. He's got a couple of riders up the road, but again, you can only fight against those around you. A really impressive Svenja just coming through. Still good points. It'd be interesting to see if she can push on here. They've got the chase group behind. They've probably not gone all in for those points there. See Doug, Mark B again, just separating out a bit. But again, once they've put in these big sprint efforts, it's really hard to stay away. But that's when they can make the biggest gains. When the riders behind are still tiring, you've had this huge speed advantage from sprinting. Just want to hold on to that speed as long as possible. Far easier said than done. Moving back up to the front. And just see this group breaking up a little bit on the climb. Ervik and Parky pushing away, Ali with them too. So this could be very interesting what happens here. See, DRB's really fallen back now. I think you just might be seeing through the race where they can jump onto these two riders. Manalo's struggling away, 3 watts per kilo, still strong efforts. Nothing to be trifled with. But again, they can definitely do more when on form. Put in a lot of effort on these segments so far. See Ervik on their wheel here. This looks like this could very well stay away as our lead group. I'm surprised that Paul's let this go. And with these Bs that we have here, I suspect they're going to try and chase it down, but maybe they're just kind of holding these punches when it's going to count a bit more on the tempo. We see Daz there, pushing hard. It's not far to go before the start of the climb. It's the left turn. You might just be able to see at the end of this bridge. Might see some bike swaps as well when we get there. And that could be why we've seen this breakaway attempt. And so if Daz here might be able to catch them out, because if these riders do swap, we're looking at about 10 to 15 seconds for a bike swap onto the dirt or gravel bikes, which will give them a bit of a speed advantage, but it's got to make up that 10-15 seconds. Now, if I was in their position, I'd probably be swapping. It's a smallish group, lots of individual riders scattered, and without the benefit of that draft, it's going to be probably maybe a 30-40 second difference, if not more, for riders who can really send it. So 2 good swaps and you've made up that difference. So keep an eye. The ideal time swap isn't here while the speeds are still high. It's going to be a bit round this corner, just where the road turns up again. But we'll see how riders time it, or if they don't swap at all. There we see, so Ali's the first to go, or is it Parky's the first to go, and then Ali going as well, both swapping. See Daz and Thomas Zervik. So both of them have chosen to swap before the segment banner. So it's not the ideal place to swap in the perfect world, but because they want that fastest FTS segment, if they swap after the banner, they lose that time. Whereas now they can really send it. And it seems to have been a poor swap for Ali there, really losing time to Park. He's going to have to send it hard. A really strong performance from Alan here. He's sending it hard, and that's exactly what he needs to do. Push hard, get up to speed. He's just had a few seconds rest. It doesn't feel like it when you're panicking, pressing buttons, trying to change bike. But it is rest, and you want to send it, get back up to speed and take advantage of this. If you can get under someone strong's wheel, like Daz, then it's going to work really well for him. So you can just get on that wheel, sit behind for a few seconds, recompose, and then go again when it gets really steep. So we're going to be looking around 6 to 7 minutes for this climb off the top of my head. So it is going to be a long effort. You do have to pace it, but again, it's broken up into these flatter sections where you're looking at 2, 3, 4%, and steeper 5, 6, up to I think 8 or 9% for some parts, especially later on. In this direction, it gets much steeper later on, whereas in the other direction, it starts off steep and slowly flattens out. Although it doesn't really feel like it, it just feels like it gets harder and harder. But you see this gap has started to form up with Daz leading everyone up the road. Parky behind on his wheel, then we've got a bit of a gap back to this group. So Ali's broken away. He is on the dirt bike or the gravel bike. I think it's the gravel bike. Well, it looks like a disc bike because Zwift hasn't updated it, but it will be most likely a gravel bike. And then we've got this other group of riders who haven't changed behind, all just kind of forming together. But what's important here is see they're all just a bit broken apart. If you look at the bottom of the screen, you see that 4 meter gap, but then 18 meters, 14 meters, 14 meters there, 11 meters there. That means they're not getting any draft benefit. Now we're talking, you know, maybe 1-2 watts when we're at 13 kilometers an hour. But when we get back up to the likes of 20, 30 kilometers an hour, it starts to really up. And you know, it doesn't sound like much if we're talking maybe 10 watts at these speeds now. But that really adds up in terms of effort over the course of a climb. And if you get into those high speed sections that we see in some places where 30, 40, like at the start, then you're talking, you know, 0.2, 0.3 watts per kilo, and that can cost you a good 10 seconds on the climb. See, Ali's still really sending it here. Try and get onto Parky's wheel. He's not quite made it there. See, Daz, without the bike swaps, just been left for dead when we hit these steeper sections. He's doing really well though, keeping up, pushing hard. See the light numbers showing he's above 4 watts per kilo, above his FTP. But he's pushing really, really hard to try and hold off. But without that bike swap, he's going to be struggling. See Paul coming through hard. He's just taking time out quickly, and there we go. So it looks like Ali's got onto Parky's wheel, and so these are going to be our 2 leaders and are likely to stay away now. If they keep maintaining this pace. Oh, is that a little move from Ali? So this is where, if you're in Ali's position, you've just caught up Parky, and you know there could be a couple of options. Parky might have accepted, you know, Ali's going to get me, I might as well just sit up, save my energy for the top, and really try and beat him out there. Or he's really tired, you know, he's pushed really hard to try and get that gap, and he's blowing, at which point this is where Ali needs to kind of try and make a move. He's got these 7-8% sections just around this corner. It flattens for a few seconds, and if you can try and drop him now, make it hurt before Parky gets his breath back, it's the best opportunity. Once he gives it a minute or so, Parky will be suffering, but he'll be a bit more composed, have his breath back, and have had a little bit of recovery on Ali's wheel. So if Ali wants to break him, this is the time now, and there we go. You see him, that 7 watts per kilo, that's a clear push from Ali just before the flatter section, stopping Parky getting any draft through this section. A really good move, and then he might ramp it up again. He's got the gap open, he's got that 12 meter gap, so now he really needs to stick it in and just break off the gap. There we go, he's up to 5 watts per kilo. So Alan's working quite hard here, he's trying to get back on, he knows how important this is. If that gap opens up, then it could continue to grow to the top. It doesn't look too far to go on the climb now, but this section is really hard. You can see the heart rate's up 173, 150 for Ali, so they're both suffering. See Paul here, 183, really working hard to try and chase them down, but that gap isn't really closing to them. He's breaking apart the rest of the field, who are still semi-bunched together. I see Manalo working hard here, chasing down, but that gap's opened up to Ali and Parky from him, so he's not going to be getting FTS here. at least the top few scores, he'll get some points. But it's not going to be troubling the top 2 spots where you get the nice bonuses. So again, Parky's managed to get back on. Really good performance from him. Paul's slowly getting this, and be really important. If Paul can get on with these front 2, then that could very well be first place sewn up. It's all downhills or flats from here, so it's going to be hard for a chase group to take up too much time, and even more so when you look at how broken up they are. You can see the gaps on the right hand side of your screen, on the left hand side of that bar. I see Ali pushing again, just ramping it up to 7 watts per kilo or so, just trying to drop Parky, but he's doing really nice, just holding onto his wheel, giving everything he can, and that's what's so important. He's just empty the tank to hold on. And it's just a little move from him. Is he pushing through? I think he's just getting in front, trying to discourage Ali from pushing through and going for another attack. Now see Ali again, just using the top, using those steep percents. So we get up to 9%. Just trying to attack again. Alan's not going to let him go. Oh, it's just opening up. He needs to get hold now. This is the moment. This is the moment for Ali. He needs to get hold. Use his last steep percent. It's going to be flat from here, but Ali's just broken it away. Oh, and this is going to be interesting now. So they're opening up this gap, and the question's going to be on this downhill what they do with swapping bikes. So whether Ali sticks on his gravel bike, knowing he's got this advantage, knowing he's in first place, or he tries to swap back. If he swaps back, he'll get ahead, but it'll be a chase down. I think for both of them, they'll know they should really swap back. They can wait until the bottom when the speeds kind of level out. Oh, this is interesting. So Ali's stopping immediately. So on this downhill, it's largely dirt, but it goes really downhill straight into some road downhill. See Parky just jumping on straight after him. So neither have chanced it by waiting longer, using the speed of the dirt bike on the downhill to try and take an advantage. But again, that was a good swap from Parky. F1 style, and he's managed to grab onto Ali's wheel there. It's interesting to see Ali another slow stop, not quite as bad as his previous one. See the times coming up for KOM there. So good advantage for Ali there. Had to put in a huge effort after this poor swap, but it's worked out well for him. He's got the FTS points, he took the foul points, and now he's in this lead group of 2 with Parky. See Paul also swapping back. It's interesting to see if any riders are going to try and just maintain it until we get onto some flatter sections. Personally, I'm not quite sure what I would do in this situation. If I was Parky, I'd possibly have chanced it, tried something different, especially knowing that Ali wasn't going to immediately grab your wheel. If, Ali had been able to change in time, just grab onto your wheel straight away, and so he was on a quicker bike than you on the downhill and just sit in, then definitely you have to swap. But Parky had the opportunity to break through and turn it into just 2 individual time trials to the finish. Who could maintain the highest and time it the best? So jump back through, see Manala come through the line. A couple of the other riders are going to take a look back at the lead C riders. And so that'll be the Amethyst and Platinum. As they're coming towards the top of the climb. Not quite sure what's happened there. Looks like one of them might have had an internet connection issue. But they normally reappear quite quickly after that. So yeah, Amethyst and Platinum riders. We've got Aitan leading the way at the moment. Just coming through. DRB's just struggling. But looks like Tan's going to take most likely the FTS points. Having a little bit of a chatter at the front, with lots of riders making the complaints that they're unfit and then continuing to push out huge numbers, which you always see when riders return after a lovely summer riding outside, enjoying drinks in the garden, and all the joys of the British summer. So, a good month of rain, but it has picked up. Interesting. I'm not quite sure what's gone on there. Apologies, I'm sure you can find out more from Parky and Ali later, but they seem to have been caught up by this chase group of bees. I wonder if they're just going too slow, but Daz has gone all the way through them in the Hellhounds. So it's just wonder if that's a case that the other riders are still on their gravel bikes. They've just flown past the higher speeds. But in this one, those situations where it is downhill, you know, -7%, but because they're on road bikes, on dirt, they're only doing 50 kilometers an hour. Which, you know, if I'm taking these corners in real life, probably a bit more concerned, but on Zwift, that's fairly slow. They should really be into the mid-60s, almost the 70s at these speeds if it was on track road. And so it's really important that these riders keep pedaling on these downhills. They're not the kind of downhills where you can just sit and do nothing. You see Hendrik really pushing hard here. And that's a really fundamental skill. It's great to see it, that, you know, you've come from these high speed sections. You want to hold on to that speed as long as possible. If you're doing 5 watts per kilo out of that high speed section, it's going to get you far more speed, far more time on the kind of the solo rider up the road, Daz, than if you do 5 watts per kilo on the flat, because you're already carrying this extra speed that you haven't had to do any work for. Oh. It looks like it's just broken apart. They're starting to chase onto each other's wheel, and this is one of the dangerous sections. Not quite sure why they're slowing even more. They're happy to let the bees go through, which is odd to see. This provides a good opportunity. If Ali or Parky sprints here, gets back onto those bees' wheels, they're going to be in a really good position. But again, it's really dangerous territory where they're all separated out on the road. Little groups still have an advantage on the downhill. See Paul really pushing here. So Darren, Manza, Daz on here is pushing hard. He's maintaining really good numbers, close to 4 watts per kilo on the downhill. So I presume he'll be doing around 4 on the flats, maybe just above. It's not long to go now. And this is all grouping back together, those 4 riders. Now the real chase is going to begin. Not long to go at all. The last segment's very close to the finish. I believe that's at 32 kilometers, roughly. I see just splitting apart yet again as some riders push, trying to close the gap, and others don't respond. See Manalo sending it hard there. Not quite sure, maybe he's kind of sniffed that this front group's not going at these really high paces, and trying to encourage this chase group to try and work with him and close that gap. So you've seen a lot of these groups just relaxing a bit. They're small groups, so they can easily stay away, and generally, you know, they're broken off the front or they've broken off the back, and so you're in rough speed order. So if there's no real determined efforts, then it will stay apart. But a sustained chase effort from 2-3 riders could easily close the gap. See Tan now, little breakaway, but he's starting to be chased down by this group of riders, which includes another in his category, Tommy Mullins, I believe. So again, if Tommy can encourage those, there's no real reason for the others to work too hard. Those in B have got a good 1 minute 20 gap to the likes of Tom Zervik and Paul. But you know, it is possible. But I think that's going to be a chase effort that has to be led by the other riders, by Tommy himself, if he wants to catch up to Eitan. Yeah, so it's the Tower Sprint Reverse will be the final segment before the finish. That's an FTS at 32.4 kilometers. So you see that gap now up to 11 seconds. Again, it's showing the impact that these new pack dynamics have had on the breakaway. See, Ali's trying to chase it down. Again, just some combined work here will do it. But Darren's pushing hard, as I said, just above 4 watts per kilo. Which means he's paced it really nicely from that breakaway. He's just done, you know, good, maybe 10%, 10-15% below what he's capable on the downhill. Holding the flat numbers on the flats. Exactly what he can do for about 20 minutes, say. And then probably giving a little dig when he hits the dirt section coming up. And that's, I suspect, where the real moves might start to be made. See Ali just pushing off the front here, and Parky has to be careful. We're going to hit the dirt in maybe 30 seconds or so. And if Ali's really clever about this, not putting out any alarming 6-7 watt per kilo numbers, if he just keeps it at 4-5 watts per kilo, he might be able to break away. But I think he is just doing this to try and bring the group back. See there, Parky responding, moving towards the front. So here we go, hitting the dirt. See Darren just raise it up at the front, but nothing much from Ali here. It's a bit surprising. I'd expect to see him kind of going for this long-ranging move. Possibly he realises he's got that FTS coming up, where he wants to have riders. Yep, there we go. So very aware of the FTS segment coming up, and he's going to want to try and take points there. And his best chance of doing that is in a big group. He knows he's got the likes of Manalo behind him, chasing them down slightly. He's kind of given up that chase, see the 1 minute 25 gap. But, you know, in a raw sprint, Manalo's definitely got the numbers to take Ali. And so Ali, with the draft benefit of the group, if he can keep them all together and use them, then he's got far more chance of taking the points. And the same for Parky. So that's one of the things that comes into this kind of points racing. It's not just the obvious, oh, you want to cross the line first, break away, and, you know, be that solo rider. You've got to think about all the situations, who you've got to beat, where you can pick up points versus them. So as we're coming towards the last part of the race, just going to take you through to the sprint segment, and unfortunately we're going to have to leave a little bit early for another race. But I've got, as we see popping up on the screen there, but we've got the sprint segment coming up, and I think the race is largely going to be decided then. So hopefully if Darren can stay away, going to be a good result for him in the B category, then possibly between Ali and Parky. Possibly Ali, from the results we've seen so far in the segments, taking the one in the A category. But thank you very much to everyone who's joined the stream so far. I know Alan really appreciated it, and I'm sure that everyone surrounding him, everyone who's worked towards this kind of cause and helping out the Bodie Hodges Foundation, would really appreciate it too. I wanted to put out a few messages just to anyone watching. I've mentioned a few of them so far, but just before we leave, just want to send out that we just want to say thank you for everyone taking part. It really does mean a huge amount to him to have everyone's support. And on behalf of the dirt racing team and the wider Zwift community, he'd really like to send his best and all our best and thoughts to Dave, Gemma, Harry and their family and friends. So thank you very much. And we can just see the sprint segment just come up ahead where I'll be leaving you today. So you see Ali's had to go long here to build up the speed, and then he's going to really send it now. As we come over the ramp, got a little downhill, then we're into the segment. So he's really he's possibly gone a little bit too early here. We might see him start to suffer as he comes into the segment. But if you don't hit the start of it hard, then it doesn't matter what you do in the segment itself. We see him pushing on here. There we go, start the segment. So he's going to be going for these FTS points. Manalo's going to be behind, probably giving it a go as well, trying to solidify his grasp on the podium, potentially trying to get that first place. But there we go, see Alan really sending it in. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Ali takes it. He's came in with a much higher entry speed, but really died towards the end. Or if Parky can take it, taking advantage of all this speed from the likes of Paul and Hendrick ahead. So Ali set the first one at 20 seconds. What's Parky able to do? Here we go. Oh, 17 seconds, so really well done there. It shows the benefit of the draft. And now he's going to be jumping straight back onto Ali's wheel. So really well done from parking there. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the end. So thank you very much to anyone watching. Please check out the description below. Sorry we couldn't feature all the way to the end. You'll see the results on Zwift Power, which is also linked. But the vast majority of it's been wrapped up now. So really well done to everyone completing, and thank you all for the support.